All right, I think we just went live. Yes, there we are. Awesome. Love it. Whew. All right. Hello, hello. I was going to see if anyone hops on tonight. I know a few of you were hoping to be here with me live. So I'm going to just get my desktop situated here. I have some notes for today because I want to make sure we cover the first principle of intuitive eating and that I turn off my notifications on my phone. Uh, all right, here we go. We're good now. If you hop on live, just write in the comments. Let me know you're here. Would love to say hi. If you're catching the replay, you guys are so good about it already, but if you would just type replay in the comments when you watch the replay, and then I could say hi then. So what I want to do is start off our series talking about the first principle of intuitive eating, which is reject the diet mentality. So we're going to just kind of dive into a little information about it. I have kind of the why behind it and then the how, which I think is probably the part you really, really want to hear is the how do you do this? Especially in a culture, right? In a world that seems to highly praise and put on this pedestal dieting. It's nothing new. I think we all know that. Dieting has been around for a very long time. We laugh at the ones that were, you know, I'm going to say the numbers wrong just because my brain lives sometimes in the 1990s. I know that it's 2022, but I'm talking early 1900s, right? That even diets, we laugh back then. We even look at maybe like that time, 1950s, where smoking was used as a diet tool. I mean, smoking was used to cure a whole lot of things. But women have been targeted specifically for a very, very long time. And as beauty standards changed, so did some of the diet marketing. And you can kind of even go through and track how that looks over time. I did a podcast last year, and I think it was season 2 of the podcast, even talking about kind of that beauty standard and clothing industry, and you see them all interconnected and how things have shifted and changed with the value of different parts of women's bodies, so what we're doing to them and how we're manipulating them. And it's it's not going away, unfortunately. I keep hoping that we've reached that place where we figured out this doesn't work. In fact, diets are the number one predictor of weight gain. I mean, nobody wants to hear me say that, but it's the truth. And if you actually ever sat down, there's an exercise you can really do. It's a hard one to do, I think, on your own, but one you can do is you can actually do your own timeline and history of dieting. And what you'll notice is ever since that first one, you've needed to do it again and again because what happened? You gain that weight back. And some people gain that weight back and then some. So if you do your own timeline of dieting, you probably don't have some of that hard data, right? You probably don't have that available to you where it's going to say, you can have a timeline that says, well, I lost this, then gained that. You probably don't have that level of data. But what you probably can prove without any question is that the diets never worked. Because if the diets worked, it would work and it would be the one that would work. Um, Unfortunately, marketing has figured this out too, that we know this thought, like we can see like that the diet's not working. So what they start marketing to you is you haven't found the right one. They start telling you you don't have the right answer yet. You've been doing it all wrong. And then we throw in words like lifestyle and really, really mess with you so that you're utterly confused on what to do. Um, some other notes I wrote down about diets in general. This is really answering my question of why would we reject the diet mentality. They can't measure health by your weight. I know that one sometimes does not sit well with people, because if you've had ingrained in you that one of the answers, one of the members came up with, thinner is better, healthier. And those are messages that are usually taught to us. They are taught to us early, usually. But health is a behavior. Health is not a number. Success is not a number on the scale. Success for you and your health could look like going to therapy. For my clients, success for them feels like moving their body in a way that they enjoy, improved digestion, better sleep. You don't need to lose weight to improve health markers. There's actually studies out there, and again, things diet culture, the weight loss industry is not going to talk about, is there's studies out there showing improved health markers, cholesterol, heart, diabetes, any of the blood sugar, so blood sugar, not diabetes, but blood sugar related, actually showing improvement without dieting. And they've done side by side studies. There's some famous twin studies that have been done with one of the twins dieting and the other twin not. I want to come back to one of the members, thinner, a message that, why it's hard to let go is we've believed thinner is healthier, thinner is better, being in a smaller body. And this really is, first of all, this is a cultural belief, right? That's a belief that, especially in our culture, we believe that we need to be thin. I think it's important to acknowledge that your feelings are valid and that this is how you feel. And again, it's something you taught, and you need just acknowledging that why you think this way and asking yourself even like, what makes me think this way? And it could be you want to avoid being discriminated against. You see how people in larger bodies are treated, and you want to avoid that at all costs. There can be, past trauma that gets triggered, especially if you were in a larger body at a young age and you were bullied and treated poorly. And that could be from classmates, friends, I wouldn't say they were friends, right? But that could be parental figures, caregivers treating you poorly when you were in a larger body, even if it had to do with puberty, even if it was part of just your body changing and growing. You were taught that this message that I'm more valued, there's more worth if I'm in a smaller body. The truth is, dieting hurts us. It's harmful. I think we just talked, I just shared a bunch of reasons why it is, but we can also acknowledge it hurts others. And I think about something I actually just shared online was within the context of the Instagram reel post, was an apology for posting these photos of my body, the before and afters, the accountability that we see all the time. I mean, I can't be on social media it's within the first moment. It's usually on Facebook because my Instagram feed is so curated because that's where I spend more time. But my Facebook is, friends and family members, other people I know in other ways. And there's so much you see of posting your weight, posting your body, posting, the one I saw today that triggered my own apology for the harm that I know I did to others was, I'm going to share I'm starting here. Here's my beginning. And this, I'm doing all these things for myself, but here's my soon to be before, after. And you can actually go on Instagram if you want to go read more about that. But what we're not seeing is the underlying stress that diets are causing. even just trying to keep up with the latest diet. What's everyone doing? What am I not doing right? I need to eat healthy. I need to only have organic. I have to have farm raised. I can only eat, fruits and vegetables and lean meats. I can't have anything processed. Like all of the stress from trying to keep up with diets and diet culture is actually having detrimental effects on your physical health. And I say to my clients, it's the stuff you can't see. Literally the things going on inside of you that you can't see, and emotionally the toll that that's taking on you. So, if all of that at least gets you to a place where you're like, okay, I really get it. Diets don't work. And I'm ready to kind of reject the diet mentality. I'm ready for this. How do you do it? And that's what I wrote down is kind of some steps to help you reject the diet mentality. I want to say this is principle 1 for a reason. And doesn't matter what resource from Evelyn or Elise that you read, that this is number 1 for a reason, because if you still hold on to hope or a thought that, you're going to find this perfect diet, right? Or that you need to lose weight to find happiness, acceptance, to be okay, it really does make embracing the rest of the principles really difficult. So just to remind you, there are 10 principles of intuitive eating. This is just the first one. And if you find yourself struggling with other principles, this is where I suggest come back to it. Come back to this process, come back to these steps I have today. Ask yourself some questions. Am I holding on to some diet thoughts? Maybe, where have I let diet mentality kind of sneak in? So if you find yourself, maybe you've even been, I know there's a lot of women in this group, they've been on this intuitive eating journey for a while. And sometimes you feel like you kind of hit a place or something happens, something big emotionally, something traumatic, something high stress, and you find yourself really struggling. Come back to this one. Okay, is this a diet thought? Is this something that's helpful or harmful to me to think this way? So first, acknowledge the damage diets have done. And this is where I said, if you go back and actually look at your own history, whether you've done one diet, though that's rare, and I think even in our community here in this group, it's going to be very rare, but even if you've done one diet, can you acknowledge the damage that diets have done? I mean, physically, like gaining that weight all back. All that, you made all of these sacrifices, you gave up going out, you didn't eat this or that, and then you gained all that weight back, and maybe even then some. Acknowledge the damage that diets have done emotionally. Like maybe you don't even trust yourself around food, or that you don't know what the best decisions are for yourself anymore. What about the mental damage that diets have done? Like you're always thinking about food, or you're trying not to think about food. You could also look at if there's other people around you, how it's affected them. That was something that hit me like a ton of bricks in how it affected my kids. Maybe it's friends, it's family. Think about those in marginalized bodies and how much diets have done damage. There's people living in such shame and guilt and embarrassment because of diet. So if we just can first and foremost acknowledge diets have been really damaging, personally, at large, and just seeing and acknowledging that. I don't want you to skip that part because it really is important to this process. Then, what do you do next? Give yourself compassion. I actually think my clients probably hear that word from me more than anyone. Like, have compassion for yourself. So diets keep us in this pass-fail mentality. When you're in that pass-fail mentality, is very little room for self-compassion. And there's no pass fail with intuitive eating. It actually, by removing this pass fail thought process, right? The idea that you can pass or fail, that if you take that out, there's this room to put in compassion, curiosity, learning, understanding, grace. There's so much more room when we take that out. I will say in this one, I wrote this down because this is something personally that I had to do. I'm going to take a sip of water. You might need to forgive. You might need to forgive yourself. I know that was a process I had to go through. You might need to forgive others who have contributed to your diet mentality. You might need to forgive those who put you on a diet. And that can be caretakers, that can be doctors and practitioners. And I know somebody reached out to me and they had a coach who put them on a diet. Fitness trainers, whoever it is. You might need to forgive yourself and just let yourself off the hook, for being part of this diet industry and, all the things that you did. I had to really work through that and to be able to just say, you know what, I'm going to forgive myself. I got sucked into this so deeply and it really did release something in me. Okay, so first we've acknowledged the damage that diets have done. Next, compassion, which might include forgiveness. The next thing I wrote down was to start recognizing diet thinking. So something I share in my coaching sessions is that the first thought you have is not the thought that you have to land on. I'm going to say that again. I think it's really important. The first thought you have is not the thought that you have to land on, the ending thought you have to have. So your first thought right now, especially in this process, especially on this journey, especially if you're just starting out or you're exploring, or maybe you've even been on it for a while and you notice, like, I still have these diet thoughts that come in. You recognize that's a diet thought. That's diet thinking. That's restriction. That's shoulding. That's all of these things that are harmful and take from me, and I don't want to be in that. You can go, wait a minute, and nope. I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to believe that. Instead, this is what I believe. Changing neural pathways is possible. Think about that. You weren't born having diet thoughts, right? You weren't born thinking diet things. Those neural pathways were created over time. They were absolutely created over time. So if you think about that those neural pathways were created, you can create new, or change, it really is creating new neural pathways in your brain. You can absolutely change your thoughts. So I think oftentimes in this journey, what I hear from women is, they're beating themselves up for even having the thought. But of course you're going to have the thought. You've been thinking these thoughts for a really long time. The great thing is you start identifying the thought. You recognize, this is a diet thought. I don't want to think this. Nope. Pass. Done. Don't want this. And then I would say one of the greatest things you can do is actually choose a thought you want to believe. Because that's the part where we're changing neural pathways. That's the part where we're shifting our thought. That's the part where we're doing the work in our brain that needs to be done. Because the dieting is here, right? We're taking these actions. We're doing this thing based on all these thoughts that we have. So you have this amazing ability. So instead of judging it, when you see the thought, when the thought comes up, and maybe you did take an action even based on the thought, you can still say, no, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to believe this. What I believe is, and change the thought. Okay. Part of this also in recognizing diet thinking is breaking down. I think it is a fantasy that comes with focusing on weight loss. It's kind of this idea, this statement: when I blank, then I will blank. When I lose that 15 pounds, then I will finally accept my body. This kind of thinking, it really is fantasy thinking. And I want to just be very clear: you're not the problem. Your body is not the problem. The culture is the problem. The culture is why the fantasy even exists. You've been told, you've been taught, if I lose this weight, or if I am in a smaller body, well then, and you can fill in that blank, I'll have a better sex life. I'll be accepted. I will like myself better. It's all fantasy. And the fantasy holds you back. So when I blank, then I will blank. Even acknowledge what that is for yourself and letting the fantasy go. If you go again back to the timeline, back to the diets, back to this is what I did, and then I tried this one, and then I did this, and then I did that, and it never gave you the thing, right? You had the fantasy, you had these beliefs every single time before, and it did not give you the thing because it's a fantasy. I wrote this down because I think I want to make sure I say it. Being mindful of your thoughts is the skill most valuable in this process. Being mindful of your thoughts is the most valuable skill in this process. Get curious about what you're thinking. Recognize what's going on. I literally use this all the time. With intuitive eating, there is a sense of like, this is easier. I have clients ask me like, when does this get easier? It does get easier. It does get easier, but these things are why it gets easier. Because sometimes that little thought wants to like creep its way in. I always picture like, I don't know, this little inchworm thing coming into my brain. I don't know why that's the image I have. You're welcome. But it comes in here, and I have this skill to be able to see my thoughts and get curious, like, where did that come from? What is going on with me right now that I'm thinking this thought? Are my emotions really high? Am I tired? Did I just have an argument with somebody? Was I just on social media and something triggered me? Where is this coming from? Not in any sort of judgment, but in that curiosity of, ooh, all right, I need to check on my own thoughts. All right, finally, rejecting the diet mentality. Here's an action step you can take right now. I'm going to put a link right here. I think I have it. Is get rid of all the dieting tools. All of them. I actually have a diet detox checklist. I'm going to grab the link. I think I have it in the description, but I'm going to put it right here in the comments chat box. I don't know what we call that on Facebook. If you haven't grabbed that yet, you can grab the Diet Detox because it's kind of a done for you checklist. There's a lot of sneaky hidden diet culture. It could be leftover food containers, if you were meal planning and sorting food and really restrictive. It could be certain clothing items that trigger you. Maybe you haven't even cleaned out your closet since your body has changed. It can be your social media. It can be the scale. It can be diet cookbooks, that we've hung on to and haven't gotten rid of. I'd even say like, if you're a Pinterest user, maybe those boards need to be deleted. Anything that triggers diet thoughts. And the checklist that I created really hits a lot of areas, especially ones you might not think of. So that's something you can do right now, is start kind of literally going through. Maybe there's ones you've already done, and then there's maybe ones, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about that. And you want to set a plan. When do I want to go through this? Like I said before, when it comes to thoughts, I have these strategies, I have these tools, because this is an ongoing practice. It's not one and done. It's not check it off the list. Reject the diet mentality. Boop. I'm done with this. I don't need to ever think about this again. No, you have these things built in, and like I said at the beginning, is something going on right now because you're having all these diet thoughts? Come back to this. For some, it's, years and years of dieting thinking that you're undoing. You're literally rewriting. We talk, those neural pathways. Some people, it's 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years that you're undoing and rewriting. It is an ongoing practice. And this is a good one. Just keep coming back to this. So I'm going to go over these, just recapping the how part. We went over the why and then the how. Acknowledge the damage that diets have done. Give yourself compassion. There's no pass fail here. Recognize diet thinking. And I gave you just kind of what we can do within that. How do we see the thought? What do we actually believe instead? And then part of that also was breaking down the fantasy of focusing on weight loss. And again, I said right at the beginning, if you're here and if you didn't catch that at the beginning, and you look at your own timeline of dieting, if you look at your own history, you can actually prove without a doubt that it's been a fantasy the whole time. Finally, get rid of all the dieting tools. I gave you guys my diet detox checklist. It's in the group. It's in the comments here. I think it's even in the description boxes where I put it. Is to let go of these things that are triggers, these things that are holding you in this diet mentality. This is ongoing. We don't just check it off, we're literally changing our thought patterns, which are changing our actions, our habits. It's why partnering with someone can be helpful. Someone who knows the principles of intuitive eating. If it matters to you, someone who's walked the journey. I know that's not important to everybody. I know my clients appreciate that part, but I don't think it's a requirement to work with somebody. But what I think is something I hear all the time is, man, isn't it nice to have a cheerleader in your corner? Isn't it nice to have somebody who literally tells you you're amazing when I don't feel amazing, because this is hard. Somebody who can bring you back to the things you need to focus on, that will be helpful. Somebody to encourage you on this journey, because I do think it's hard. Having walked it, having been walking it, walking other women through it, I know how difficult it is. And I think diet culture teaches us to stay in our box, do this alone, because there's so much. We already know there's guilt attached. We already know there's shame. We were talking in our group, I think it was last week, about embarrassment and coming back and being like, well, I've gained this weight and now I feel embarrassed. When you have someone by your side, you literally have a cheerleader in your corner, someone who's been there, but someone also who knows what you might need to hear in those moments. So I will let you know at the end, the diet detox might be the best place for you to start, but for some of you, it might be jumping in to the work. I have 2 spots open for one-on-one clients right now, just 2. And that's probably until after April. So just 2 openings. If you're interested, I'm actually not going to put it in the comments here. I'm going to ask you to send me a DM and let me know that you'd like the link to hop on a call to talk about working together one-on-one. All right, reject the diet mentality. Woo, I think it's a good starting point. And if you're watching this live or the replay, I'll remind you that Thursday is Q&A. I'll be posting about that so you can submit your questions. We already have a pretty heavy topic to start with, and talking about intimacy. So we'll be addressing that, but all questions are going to be answered. So I'll make sure you guys have a way to submit those for Thursday's Q&A. As for reject the diet mentality, I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments what was most helpful to you, what you feel you can implement right now. And maybe if you've been on this journey, if this feels like something you feel really confident and strong in, maybe you have an encouraging word for others who are just starting this journey out. All right. It's about dinner time here. I will catch you all on Thursday.